Hello once more. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from, and welcome to today's Research and Impact Network. And I'm pleased to welcome you to today's session. We're going to be focusing on a topic on enhancing evidence-informed policymaking for the energy and human health nexus, a case study of Western Kenya. So during this session, we're going to explore how evidence can effectively inform policy and action at the intersection of energy access and human health. Drawing on insights from Western, the session is going to highlight opportunities, challenges, and lessons for advancing integrated context-specific policy responses. So we find that the recent analysis in Western Kenya reveals some gaps, including fragmented leadership, a limited training capacity on evidence-informed policy making, inadequate funding, insufficient tools. So these insights will form the basis of our dialogue and collective reflection during today's session. Our speaker is with us, Amos Obonyo, who is going to take us through this very detailed study. And before he begins, I'd just like to remind all of us to keep our microphones muted unless you want to speak. But we are also going to have a dedicated question and answer session at the end of the session, where everyone will be free to share their insights, comments, and questions. In the meantime, you can introduce yourself in the chat box and tell us where you're joining us from, as I welcome Amos to begin his presentation. Amos, feel much welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Edna. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me share my screen. The host disabled participant screen sharing. Would you allow that?
Okay, Nancy, please help with that. As that is being enabled, I encourage all of us to introduce yourselves, tell us where you're joining us from, so that we keep the discussion going on.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, Edna.
Yes.
Maybe I could begin telling where I'm coming from, because
yes, sure.
it's not.
Help. Please feel free. And if you're in a position to open your camera, please do so, so that our audience can have a look
I
at it.
don't know whether you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. Okay.
Oh.
So a lot of things, I think you've enabled a lot of restrictions. Still, there's a problem from my end, and I don't know. I'm not sure. But I'm Obonyo Amos. I am a Kenyan citizen by birth. Now I'm in the western part of Kenya, in the former Nyanza region. Yeah, and I'm a limnologist and an environmental manager at the same time. I work part-time with Masinde Muliro University, and I'm an RN fellow. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Amos, for that.
Could I give you my presentation so that you operate it from the other end? Because I think it is still not enabled.
Yes.
So check your WhatsApp in a few minutes.
Have you been able to send it? Amos, have you been able to send it?
Oh, I was muted. Sorry. I'm sending in just 1 second. It's coming.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I was talking. I didn't mean that I'm not muted. So I was muted. I mean.
It's okay. Mm.
I've sent it. Kindly check.
Okay, let me check. Yes, I've seen it. Let me just download and open it. So as I share that, you'll just let me know when you want me to move to the next slide. There we go. So I think, Amos, you can begin.
Thank you so much. As I said before, my name is Bonyo Amos, and I'm going to talk on the enhancing evidence-informed policymaking for the energy and human health nexus, a case study in Western Kenya. So we can move forward. Yes, introduction. We're all aware that everything that surrounds us, energy plays a vital role in shaping our lives, be it in the transport sector, in our domestic works, in the production process, in the industry and everything. We require energy. So it shapes economies and livelihood. And globally, a mix of both clean and unclean energy sources are still in use. But unclean energy sources have got a lot of significant impacts on human health. And an example is that it results to a lot of indoor air pollution that causes eye problem, respiratory illnesses, among others. So globally, over 3 billion people depend on the unclean energy sources. This results to about 3.5 million deaths annually. And that is despite the fact that there is a projected rise in energy demand by 24% come the year 2095. But with that, all Africa still remains the biggest energy poor continent, with only 55% of the people connected to energy. And those connected, less than a quarter are connected to the clean energy. That means that majority of the African people still depends on the unclean energy sources. So biomass energy in a nutshell dominates the Africa. And in East Africa, over 68% depend on the unclean energy sources. Move to the next slide. Next slide.
Just a minute. Don't know why it's not moving.
Just take it off presentation mode, then shift if it's stuck. Yeah.
Yeah, it's stuck on that. So maybe.
Then just get it back to presentation mode.
Good. I'm there. So in Kenya, about 68% of the population still depend on the unclean energy sources. And of course, over 20,000 premature deaths are recorded annually from the indoor air pollution that is attributed to or come from the biomass energy and unclean energy sources. So in Western Kenya, it's even a little bit serious because majority, which is over 80%, depends on the biomass energy or unclean energy sources in general terms. And they consume up to about 53 gigajoules of energy in a year. So with the anticipated climate change that is taking course year in, year out, there's a projected significant effects of climate change on the energy sector and human health in Africa that's projected by WHO come 2100. So this means that those that still depend the sections or places that depends heavily on unclean energy sources are expected to suffer the most. But next slide, sorry.
Just a minute.
Remember, yes. But despite this, as you go on, we have there's a lack of shortage. There is a shortage of evidence that link how these energy sources are really related to our human health. There is also a shortage of evidence that check on the effectiveness of the policies that we currently have on the human health and energy. It has just refused to come. I'm speaking.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for that.
You could just do whatever you did last time, yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to
or just keep it in this mode, if it can be seen in this mode.
Yes.
Yes, so this shortage of evidence or long-term health impacts of conventional energy use, the gender disparity is also understudied, despite the fact that energy use affects a different gender disproportionately. And then, as I said, that we lack sufficient studies that link climate change, energy use, and human health outcomes. And also, we do not know how effective the policies that we have are in terms of addressing the energy and human health. So for us to achieve the goal SDG or Sustainable Development Goal number 3 on good health and well-being, Sustainable Development Goal 7 on affordable and clean energy, and 13 on climate actions, there is high need for access to clean and reliable energy sources. Move to the next slide. This brings us to the goals. Goal of this project, which was to improve the evidence-informed policymaking for the energy and human health nexus in Kenya. And this was studied under 5 thematic areas. One first objective was to assess the leadership and governance structures that facilitate EIP. Second one was to analyze the existing financial models for EIP and to evaluate the institutional structures and mechanisms that support EIP integrations, to determine the availability and effectiveness of tools and technical capacity for EIP, and lastly, to assess how gender equity and inclusion are integrated within the EIP processes. Next slide. Of course, these were translated into the research questions, which I'm not just going to read. Just go to the next slide. The study institutions were majorly private companies, and these were Equilibrium Company, the Way to, and the Sunken Company Limited. These are limited companies that provide solutions to environmental problems through economic means. And the scope of their work are generally on clean energy technologies and environmental conservation. Each one of them have got a deeper penetration into the locals, and each one has over 500 employees. They operate largely in the Western Kenya, except for the Sunken that operates in the entire Kenya. But these other ones operate in the Western Kenya, the former Nyanza and Western region provinces, and part of the Rift Valley provinces. And mode of engagements that we had was on interviews and focus group discussions, and we expected from that engagement to generate, to come up with gaps, challenges, and propose actionable recommendations therein. Next slide. That next slide brings us just a graph of the study, map of the study area. Next slide. Data collection, of course, I employed the purposive sampling techniques, and sample size determination was based on the principles of data richness and saturation that's elaborated by Guest et al. 2006. And of course, I've said that we use the structured and semi-structured questionnaires, the key informat interviews, and focus group discussions to gather our data. For the direct questionnaires, we received the feedback in the 2 to 3 days. And that, of course, we cleaned all this data in the Excel, and then used the SPHS version 23 to do some descriptive statistics, come up with graphs and tables that we're going to see as we move forward. Next. In the results section, how I wish they could come, can you bring that in the presentation mode just a little bit?
Okay.
Yes, just go, because I went next. I brought them in terms of the themes. That is the first one on leadership and governance structures. Just proceed. The first thing that I looked at is the sources of evidence. Something is not working well from my side, but sources of evidence for EIP. And you can see there is a heavy reliance on expert consultation and local data, while academic research and international publications and government reports are overlooked or they are underutilized. One reason was that for the convenience, because there was an analogy that the academic research, though undergoes a very rigorous methodological process and are scientifically proven, they are written in a complex language that is not very palatable in terms of policies for these guys. But that to me seems especially a mismatch, because this is what is supposed to be done, was to be used. Though local data really have the local problems at hand, but they're supposed to use more of the academic research. So that mismatch seems to me not very well. So it needs to be upscaled. But again, the lack of or the little attention to the international publications, government reports, which sometimes form part of the international publications, may mean that the type of policy that we are coming up with may miss on the broader global perspective. So they may be too narrowed locally, that miss a broader perspective. Next slide. Just go on, proceed. Yes, the second thing that we looked at were the, I cannot see down, but I believe this is the type of, how do you call it? The capacity practices, yes. Which practices do they involve in to facilitate or promote the EIP? And there is high practice on capacity building. They practice a lot of capacity building, represented by 25.54%. Collaboration of researchers and policymakers, but you can see low uptake or low resource allocation and evidence acquisition, and a lack of, not lack, but minimal establishment of guidelines for evidence use, as shown there. So that is also brings a bit of curiosity, though we appreciate that there are a lot of practices that are very good, but lack of guidelines and enough resource allocation for data acquisition and synthesis brings a challenge, because if we don't do that, then we collaborate and do all this, then I think we are missing it. Though collaboration brings about knowledge sharing, which is equally good, but we should scale up, because if you make guidelines for research, guidelines for integrating this evidence, then it means that each and every department will be very committed to at least involving elements of evidence in their policy formulations. And then the resources have to be provided to acquire the data, synthesize them, and disseminate them. Next. Yes, we looked also at the leadership specific EIP training among leaders of these institutions, and majority acknowledge that they do not have specific EIP training. Coupled with these other challenges that we've just seen, then you can see, because if you're not practically and nicely trained on how to use the evidence that you have, then you cannot apply it. So that could be a result of the reasons why the EIP is not well picked up. Next. And then we looked at the primary barriers for the EIP integrations. What are the key barriers among leaders? So you find that there is insufficient evidence, access to the evidence, which is also replicated, because if you have from the previous graph that there's less resource allocation to the data acquisition, then obviously we must not have sufficient evidence to use in the policy makeup. And then limited technologies. Of course, if you do not have the technical capacity to acquire all this and couple with the little resources, then you cannot do something substantial in terms of impacting the evidence for policy making. Next. Good. Just present. Go on. Yes. In the theme number 2 was on the existing financial models. And the first one I checked on the existing financial support, and realized that there is over-reliance on donor funding and private sector funding, while the government grants are nowhere actually recorded by 00 of the respondents. So this is a little bit worrying, because some scenarios we say that where your wealth is, that's where your heart lies. So if government does not contribute anything to the policy formulations, then to me it looks like it's like they are not concerned about the policy that are being formed within these institutions. But of course, international donations and private sector funding are very good, but they have limitations. One, they are not sufficient. They're not enough. Secondly, they delay too much to be disbursed, and this will be shown as we move forward. And then thirdly, they are also very selective. You can get a donor funding that fixes your mind to handle a particular thing, maybe the energy aspect, but the health aspect or the health outcome of this energy is not funded for. So this brings a lot of challenges. Therefore, we need to have a level of diverse sources of funding that now makes it stable for these integrations. And then we also looked at the budget distributions. How is the budget finances that they have are distributed in different departments and activities? And it was really interesting noting that monitoring and evaluation gets a whopping 61% representation, while research and information synthesis gets 7.8%. So that is also, again, another challenge, because if you keep monitoring and evaluating, what are you evaluating for? It should be something that you've really researched, that you've allocated a lot of resources for, that is very, very rigorous. But if you evaluate and you give little attention to the resources, that it means that the data or what we are evaluating could be not properly done. Next. The third one was the primary challenges under this section or theme. And the bigger challenge was the poor and uncoordinated leadership in terms of the management of the funds. So if we have got departments, different departments working uncoordinatedly, then there could be a possibility that different departments pursue different agenda. And there is no synergy in this case. So that's a key thing that needs to be corrected just immediately, so that there is a synergy, there is no duplications of roles, there is synergy in how these departments works. Next. Yes, the last thing under this theme was funding gaps. And the biggest one was the delayed funding disbursements, as I mentioned. You can look at the complex grant application process, which I mentioned that is very, very pertinent in the donor fundings, a lack of core fundings and predictable funding streams. So this make the use of evidence becoming a little bit of a challenge. Let's go to the next one. You can use the earlier method. Yes. The next, just leave at that point, it was solely this. The next one was on institutional structures and mechanisms for supporting EIP. And we realized more of a top-down system of management, of structure, where advisory board dominates everything. And that is represented by 57.8% of the respondents. So advisory boards, we acknowledge they are guys who bring a lot of expertise to the table, but they're just a few people that may represent a small population, as opposed to the committees that would be collecting several views from several people. So task force, advisory board, as much as they are good, but more of this coming into the bureaucratic scenarios, or just a few people that control everything. So there should be more use of the committees and even the task process, though we just upscale because advisory boards are also equally important. Next. I looked at availability and effectiveness of tools and technical capacity for EIP. And in this, I first of all checked, do we have the tools and technical capacity that is enough to gather the information, synthesize them, disseminate them, and influence the policy effectively? And I realized that in data analysis softwares, what I used, the tools that are available, are very basic tools. Largely, it was Kobo Collect, the GIS, and the normal spreadsheet that we use here. So that, to me, was a little bit of a challenge, because if we lack or we don't use simulation models, knowledge management system, and decision support system, if you don't give them a priority, then it means that even the policies that we are giving out are very, very short-lived. They are short-term policies. So we cannot have long-term policies and planning in regard to the EIP. So that's a bit of a challenge to me. Then the capacity building initiatives, also their workshops, which is largely used in these institutions. And the least used was the online courses. So again, workshops are very good for introducing concepts because they are short-lived. They are very good at introducing concepts, but they are short-lived. So they cannot be very good for progressive capacity building, which we could really benefit from the on-job training and mentorship programs. Again, online courses, their low uptake is concerning because things change, like technology change. These changes can really easily be captured when we depend largely on the online courses. So a bit of upscaling. I appreciate there are a lot of things that are being done, relevant things, but we need to upscale a few things to start to move forward and in one direction. Next, which is the last under these themes, is the institutional gender integration in EIP structures. And this I would also request that you present to me in terms of, yes. Good. Yes, that one first. So gender sensitization, that's what I first looked at. Are really people that are there sensitized in this institution, sensitized about gender issues. There was a large admission by 70% of the respondents that they are sensitized, they know issues of gender. So let's check, is this reflected in what we expect down as we move forward? Let's move next. That is gender composition. And that already the first miss is that between 25 to 50% represent women in this institution, not anything above 50. So that's already a miss, but it's a good trial because we are moving towards the 50. So gender composition are a little bit low, but fairly good. Next. This is, read me down.
Formal structures for
Structures.
promoting gender equity.
Yes, structures for promoting gender equity. And we realized that majority of the respondents, that is a whopping 53%, said that admitting that there is no non-existing formal structures for integrating gender issues. And then you can see the rest are a little bit there. So we appreciate the fact that these are there, but no non-existing formal structure. That's what captured my mind. Because if you don't have gender structures within the institutions, then how do we enforce it? It becomes a little bit challenging. Next. Next.
I'm trying to move to the next. I don't know why it's, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's there now. This was looking at the gender integration challenges. What challenges do we have to integrate the gender issues into the policy? And the biggest one was the cultural norms and biases, which you can see an insufficient gender expertise. If we don't have the structures down there, then we cannot definitely have the gender expertise. And then lacking opportunities for women to present on and resisting change by some leaders. Some leaders just need status quo to continue because they're benefiting from such. So all these problems could now bring about, justify our graph B, which is on the small gender composition. Let's go to the next, which is now the conclusion.
Just a minute.
Yes, use our earlier method now. Good. I'm there. So in conclusion, from theme 1, we realized that there is over-reliance on expert consultation and local data, while academic research and governance reports are underutilized. Again, EIP-specific trainings and awareness is limited. The second one is I conclude that the funding is largely from the private sector and international donations, which are selective and inadequate, thus fail to comprehensively address the projects. Additionally, some of the challenges are the delayed fund disbursement, unclear financial cycles, missed priorities, which form part of the main barriers to the EIP integration in terms of finances. And then we have the central role of the advisory boards, which depict a top-down expert-driven model, which is not fully inclusive. So as opposed to the committees that are underutilized. Then public institutions rely on the basic data acquisition analysis softwares, as opposed to the sophisticated but very useful simulation and decision support systems. The existence of the technological gap restricts the ability of the institutions to conduct comprehensive analysis. And then the last one, there is no clear formal gender inclusion structures and support. Key barriers to gender inclusions, as I mentioned, are cultural barriers, insufficient gender disaggregated data, and limited institutional support. Recommendation, next slide. I do recommend that the government and private institutions should focus on strengthening collaborations, intra-institutional coordinations, and EIP-specific capacity building. And then supporting interventions that promote sustainable funding for EIP. For example, a more diversified funding model should be advocated for. We could also think of supporting a governance structure that promotes inclusion and participation, like the committees and task forces. That is by the private sector, which has a representation from marginalized groups, women, local, and other stakeholders, as opposed to the narrowed top-down model that we have just seen. And then we could also increase investments for acquisition of modern tools and technologies and for capacity building approaches. This should be done by both the private companies and even the government could tap in. And then we could also enhance an environment of gender equity. This could be in both public and private institutions. Enhance an environment of gender equity and inclusion. And this can be achieved through institutionalizing gender equity or by establishing appropriate guidelines and structures within private sectors, do robust gender sensitization programs, and ensure that gender experts are available. And we could also break the cultural barriers and myths that surround the gender matters. And with this, I want to thank you so much for listening to me. I'm very sorry we got the technical problems, and I got a lot of objectives that has consumed much of your time. But thank you so much for listening to me. I welcome concerns and any other thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amos, for this very well and elaborate presentation. Indeed, this is a very timely topic because you see, when we talk about the sustainable development goals and towards enhancing equitable and efficient energy access, then it is important to look into some of the matters that you've elaborately detailed in this presentation. So thank you so much for sharing these insights with us. And at this point, I'd just like to welcome the audience. For anyone with comment, question, or if you'd like to share insights that maybe Amos could incorporate further into this work, the floor is open. Feel free to raise up your hand and mute or just unmute your microphone and speak. You can as well type in the chat section. And I'll keep this presentation running just in case we need to refer back to some slides. I'm just trying to check in the chat if we have any activity there with regards to the presentation. And maybe Amos, just to kick the discussion going, is that the topic that the insights that are sharing is with us today, and I just want us to maybe relate with the work that we're doing under the LEAPS project, because it's solely focused on EIP, and gender equity is one of the core themes of that project. So just going back, let me just put up the, okay, I see Washington has their hand up, but going back to the slide where you were showing us about
Gender was the last, third last.
It was the third last.
Yes. Yeah, the last, yeah, that one.
Yes, especially under institutional gender composition. So do you think that the work that LEAPS is trying to champion for can help in enhancing this gender inclusion, gender sensitization, drawing from the insights from the LEAPS mentorship, because I know you've been part of the LEAPS mentorship and even the LEAPS training. So do you think such approaches are effective?
Thanks so much, Edna. I think they're very, very effective. And even part of the approaches that have been proposed by the RE are very, very effective, I think so. Because if you look at, for example, something that I also found even here, if we have less formal structures for enforcing gender issues within these institutions, then it becomes a little bit of a challenge. But if you have them in there, then I think that gender issues can easily be integrated within the institutions, and we can achieve much because the ideologies of different gender matter a lot in this process.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, it's always important to relate some of these things with projects that are actually being done, so that we're able to see, are we really meeting the target and are we really addressing the issue at hand? So thank you for bringing this out very clearly. Washington, you had your hand up. Please feel free.
Yeah, thank you, Amos, for your novel insights or findings. This is great work. I have two questions in two different thematic areas. Number one, capacity, then the other one will touch on, cross-sectorial integration. So the first one, in the spirit of, you talked about progressive capacity building. So from that kind of angle, what are the best approaches for strengthening institutional capacity, be it human resource? We are talking about tools, we are talking about incentives, that can, equip policy teams to appraise, interpret, and apply evidence autonomously. So that is the first question that I had in mind. The second question that I had in mind was with regards to cross-sectoral integration. And in our just concluded study, that is assessing the effectiveness of adaptation interventions in the East African region, we realized that interventions that integrate multiple, sectors, be it water, energy, food, agriculture, ecosystems, they have proven to be effective as they offer co-benefits across those sectors. They leverage synergies that in turn, reduce costs of projects or interventions while maximizing impact. So having that in mind, Amos, how can evidence from various domains, or sectors, if I may put it that way, I'm talking about agriculture and food security, I'm talking about health, infrastructure, etc., etc. So how can evidence from those sectors be synthesized to inform policies that cut across traditional silos? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The first question on best practices that we can capitalize on for capacity building. I did mention, even when I was presenting, that, if you take, for example, the workshops are very good, but they are short-lived. They don't take quite a lot of time. The program that are taken very, very fast and may not sometimes be sufficient for slow learners. So I think if we do on-job training and the mentorship, because if we take the mentorship, for example, I'm being mentored by somebody. So I'm accurately being guided on daily basis. And even the on-job training, being guided, getting training as we work also, and you get a lot of experience. And that could be very, very nice in terms of enhancing policy. That's just my thought, but it could also have others. And even if you had something that you are thinking about, we can share. Again, second one was on the collaboration. Collaboration, we have got, indeed, I appreciate there is a bit of synergy, a lot of synergy, not just a bit, but a lot of synergy when we collaborate. If you take an example of climate change, health, and for example, energy, we have got officers who are working under each of those sectors, but there are enough data in all these sectors. Others are cross-cutting. You can find in the climate comes to agriculture, health, in energy, also overlapping in the health sector and all that, and vice versa. So if we just leave these guys or these entities to operate individually or separately, then we miss, because there will be some of the duplication. So we could just have a team that representative from each sector sit down with the data that we have. Then we start to eliminate duplications. That's the first case. And then we look at those that we can easily match. It is just coming up together, sharing our views, and get to know what can work and what cannot work. That's just my thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Amos, for that. Washington, is that answer satisfactory?
I mean, it's there's no there's no yes or no answer, or rather, if the answer is sufficient. This is an ongoing discussion, and it needs all hands on deck for that matter, and a lot of political will. So yeah, it is a whole loaded kind of question. Yeah, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And because, when you talk about evidence and policy, then of course it will always be a recurring process. So as you rightly put it, there is no yes or no answer at this point, because we will continue doing more research, continue to experiment what works and what does not work. I saw Dr. Pamela's hand up. Pamela, would you like to project your insights?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I want to appreciate Amos for such a good piece of work. It's actually important that we are seeking to generate data that can actually inform policy. And I like the theme or the title, which is basically to enhance evidence-informed policy, because if policies are informed by evidence, then they are solving the real issues that are at the community level, because that is where work happens. On boardrooms, we'll be speaking, but the realities are on the ground. So when we are able to get data from the community level and use it to inform practice, lift it from the shelves to the actual work that is happening, it is a very good thing, and that is the way to go. I like the fact that he said most of the academic researches are not really utilized as it were, and yet they are good, only that oftentimes they are done for passing purposes. It's a tick of the process of learning. There is something he talked about funding. Today I was looking at a certain document that was critiquing the aspect that we think Africans are not contributing a lot in funding initiatives. And I am wondering if funding for Obonyo would also include non-financial support that is given to initiatives, to activities at the community level, because from an African perspective, there's a lot that we are giving, but it is not valued because maybe it doesn't come as monetary. Where can we place this when we are talking about funding, especially looking at the dwindling resources from the West? And yet we have a lot of resources in Africa that we can utilize. The skills, the knowledge that people give, the space, the time. Where do we place this when it comes to funding initiatives in Africa? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pamela, for your insights and for that question. In my view, I think that non-financial support or funding, as you put it, are still welcomed, and they could also play a pertinent role in all this process, because we don't just there is some skills that I may have, or take it an example that you are doing just a research out of passion. You want to try to solve a problem that you have seen over time, and you are not funded. You are just doing it out of passion. So that thing is still welcome because it is still very effective. The bottom line remains that you are doing a research and you're solving a problem. So if we have got, for example, such like skills that will contribute, yes, but not be funded. So those are very important things that I think they can form part of this. And that's why to some extent, I think they just get acknowledged, obviously, just get acknowledged and they pass on that way. But there are very, very important aspects that we can also think of when it comes to market research. Just like you can see the citizen science, it is not something that was previously thought of. But we realized that that guy was just sitting home day in, day out, just seeing, observing how things are happening within a stream, for example, and then gets to give that knowledge that maybe somebody who goes there for a research on one day cannot just find. So there are very, very important key things that I think we can just welcome and just place part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Amos, for that response, and thank you, Dr. Pamela, for bringing that up. I see there's a question on the chat before I come to Dr. Marquette. Let me just read it out loud. With the rapid evolution of technologies, how can evidence-based policymaking keep pace with innovation while safeguarding ethical standards and ensuring equitable access?
It comes on that's a bit of challenging, because if we factor in the issues of the piracy and the criminal acts that are in the online issues, then it becomes a little bit of challenging, because it is that online thing and that collaborative platforms online and all that. That's where we get a lot of these technical advancements, get versed with the changes in the technology, but they also have got their own challenges, which can be punishable by law. So that question is a little bit tricky. I cannot answer it very, very directly, but somebody may be having an idea about that. But of course, we have to depend on this online, but they have got their own limitations.
Yeah, sure, that's true. When you talk of technology, definitely there are limitations in place. And even as we champion for technological advancement, we have to keep in mind that these technological advancements that we are talking about, they also come with their fair share of challenges, in as much as they are also helping us in solving problems. So sure, maybe this is another point that we cannot conclusively say that this is the way to go, because as things evolve, many ideas keep coming up, many challenges as well as solutions. So with that, I'd pass it to Dr. Marquette. I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Edna. Yeah, so I want to join colleagues who've spoken earlier to thank Amos for the well thought out presentation. So from the onset, I'd like to say that you cover a very, very, very important area, not just speaking on the energy access, but you also link it to the health, and most importantly, the aspect of the evidence-driven policies. But yeah, quite a lot we've seen a gap or a disconnect between what the evidence says and what the policy does. So in your own view, how can we close this gap by not just documenting, but at least to be seen working on it? The second thing is I liked your approach, especially when you're driving this conversation from the policy perspective. And you mentioned the aspect of cultural being one of it. But I'm also bringing in the aspect of the requirement for the African or the developing worlds to meet or to match up the speed of transition to clean energy. Yet, we are faced with overlapping development needs in Africa. For instance, we still need to explore some of the naturally occurring resources such as oil, but we want to shift towards clean energy. So in your own view, even as we speak to the realities of the global South, Kenya being one of them, should we match up to this speed, or we should apply inward-looking policies to solve some of the, confounding challenges? Development is one among the many. You've brought in the aspect of gender equity, which personally I'm passionate about. But yeah, we still have glaring gender inequities. We still have social exclusion. And these are things that often ignored or maybe not understood. So in your own view, what do you make of these condescending things around the policy, even as we try to connect with the evidence? Thank you, Amos.
Thank you so much, Daktari, for the insights and the questions that we just brought on board. One, before I forget, your last question about my view on how the global South and North may be developed and underdeveloped in a nutshell, because the global South is less developed compared to the global North. But it is on the social factors that we have around us that we have to also factor in doing the developments. I don't know if I got you well in that.
Yeah. You got me well, and you're coming up with very well. Yeah.
Yes. So it is also a whole discussion, because if you look at the history of the global North, for example, in some extent, how they came to what they are today, there is a bit on how they interfered with a lot of things in their own setup, so that they get the match that we are seeing as good things today. Because if you take, for example, in terms of productions and gaining a lot of wealth, they destroyed nature, to be very honest. And that, if you get the honest guys, they will tell you that they destroyed nature completely. After destroying nature, it came back to us, because the repercussions now come into us because of our global position. And then after that, it is now that they are trying to mend the ways back into what it was before. So I may not authoritatively say that we have just to copy what others have just done and then go that way. If at all there is something that we can do differently to change the situation and still meet our incomes, meet our demands, and all that. So it is still a point of a debate. It's a point of a debate indeed, because if I give you an example of the Netherlands, which I've been lucky to be, there's a big question of enrichments of several parts of that country with the nitrogen, which is a nutrient. So there is, if you just read history and ask them about how this came to be, it's because of their nature to destroy their culture, that destroyed almost everything for just purposes of agriculture. Then they overuse the fertilizers and all that synthetic materials. And then now it is coming to haunt them. They are started realizing that things are not going on well. So they want to go back to the factory setting, which is not ideally possible. We are saying that we cannot restore to the original state. We can just try bring it closer to what it was, but we cannot restore to the original place. So that is just my view on that. So if there is something that we can do differently, without destroying all this, for example, then we can just explore that. The second question was on evidence not being practiced. Of course, as we have attached this to more of political issues in Kenya, because we find that we have got some good policies that are not being practiced. So the policy intent and the actions that are being taken now, or the practice, are totally different. So that is also something, as one of the colleagues said here, that needs just a global discussion, because political will and everything. That's what now makes even the policies not to be practiced as they're supposed to be. They are very good, just like the Kenyan Constitution, if I may draw to the Kenyan Constitution, very good, but not working as it's supposed to be. But people that are curtailing this, they are guys that know very well that they are benefiting from this. They want to maintain the status quo. So it is also something of a big debate that we can have, but also political will and everything hamper the policy practices. So the intention is different from the actions that we find in terms of the policies. That's my view. Thanks, Dr.
Thank you so much, Amos, for the insights. Actually, your insights form part of the deeper discussion, and I agree, connecting from where you left. It's a wide discussion that we may not end, but perhaps part of the evidence that you've generated makes the beginning of that journey even look brighter. So thank you once again.
Thank you for that, Amos and Doc. I'm just trying to see if we have any other insights from the audience. Otherwise, I'd give this opportunity to members of the upcoming conference planning committee, just to make a few announcements with regards to the abstract submission that is open. So Dr. Marquette, would you like to take that up?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Edna. So as you've seen the post on the chat, that is a forthcoming conference. It is a Pan-African conference focusing on 3 tiers. That is a climate change, environment, and health. And I believe part of the work Amos has done could fit here quite well. And many others who are working on this. We've got so many tracks. I think the last time we checked were 9 tracks covering on different aspects, but within these 3 thematic areas. So if you have that abstract, please, you can share with us, you can submit. If you can follow that poster keenly, there is a QR code where you can scan and submit your abstract. Also, if you want to come as an organization to exhibit some of the products in these 3 thematic areas, you're free to come. You can come to, showcase an innovative technology that is meant maybe to transition to clean energy, for instance. You can come showcase, and we have a distinctive plan around that. So you're free to go through that website. We have also the registration website, which is up. So you're free to do that. And we'd be happy to host you here in Nairobi. And again, this conference brings so many high-level organizations together. We are partnering with Chance Network, which is the biggest health organization in Africa. We are also partnering with the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Health here in Kenya. The state departments such as KEMRI, NEMA are all on board. So ARIN being one of the conveners. So we welcome you to be a part of this monumental conference. The preparations are in top gear. So maybe again, also I didn't mention AMREF. AMREF is also part of it. And also Aga Khan, which is part of Chance Network. So we have everyone you can think of in matters health, climate change, and environment in this high-level conference. So you're free to come and participate. present that abstract, exhibit, come as a delegate. Yeah, so you feel welcomed, and we look forward to having many of you. Would love to see many of you come. And even if you don't have space in your calendar, you could help us spread this message to your networks, and we will highly appreciate. Thank you. Over to you, Edna.
Thank you, Doc, for that. Without wasting much time, I'd like to invite our comms team to wrap this session up for us, and also to take the final group photo for those who are comfortable with their cameras being on. So Florence. Florence or Maria?
The photo?
Okay.
About the photo? You want us to take the photo? Edna? Edna, can you hear me?
Florence, I can hear you from my end. So
Okay.
Yes, I want us.
Yes, I can. It's about taking the photo, isn't it? Or,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think, Amos, that was very insightful and timely. And what we have learned today speaks to what is at the heart of ARIN's mission, just bridging evidence and policy in ways that are inclusive and practical. So we can now open our cameras and we proceed to take the photograph. So you can smile. Okay, this is done. Thank you. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, Flo, for that. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'd like to wish you a good weekend and a blessed rest of your day. See you next time, same time. Thank you and bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, guys, and bye.
Bye.